And welcome to Absolute Zero. This is Rachel Appel.
And Bertrand Leroy. And today we are talking about animal morality after having talked a few weeks ago about animal immorality or depravity.
Yep. And animal sexuality as well. It was a fun show. So, animal morality. Can animals be moral? Is the question.
Yeah, can they?
Can they? Well, I mean, we're animals.
Sure. So that one is settled.
That one's settled. We're a little different, though. So we have the most complex reasoning skills and most advanced brains on the planet. Or so we think, anyway.
Also we think, yeah.
Some people make you wonder, but...
Yeah. Douglas Adams had this piece about dolphins being actually much smarter than we are because, you know, they have essentially the same size of brain, but they spend their time, you know, playing in the waves, eating fish. They're the smart ones.
Sounds kind of reasonable. I like this. That's where we go to vacation, where the dolphins are, and they're just living
exactly.
there. And, yeah. I think he was totally smarter. So are dogs. Yeah. I mean, look at dogs are like, let's get on this train here. We'll domesticate those humans. Pretty soon they'll be walking behind us, picking up our crap.
Yeah, but they have to eat dog food. Which
is... There's that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're actually talking about other animals.
Yeah, other animals. So animal kingdom animals. So there's a whole spectrum. I mean, geez, how many species are there? And even to go into species, you can get caught up with the definition of that as well. So let's talk about some of the higher level ones like chimps and stuff.
What are we talking about? Are we talking about animals having behavior that we usually label as moral?
Oh, that's a good point too.
Because first, morality, what is it?
Right.
And is it a human construct, in which case the answer has to be no? Is it a cultural construct? Is it something absolute? Is it... You have to get into those questions.
Right. We do have to define what morality is first. Indeed. So, this morality is your system of rules in which, you know, some member of the group breaks these rules and it's, you know, a taboo thing or a bad thing, and there may be punishments for it. So generally, this kind of system of living, right, are morals. Now, morals, of course, are going to vary between individuals in the groups and whatnot, right? If you look at human morality, of course. Now, some are arguing that there might be morality in animals, not quite the same as us, but more of a proto-morality or something a little bit more primitive, in that if you take a look at where the roots of morality come from to set up these rules and structures that we have, these systems of culture that we have, it's all about empathy and reciprocity, right? Those kind of things, fairness. As a matter of fact, somebody who does a lot of work in empathy, somebody who does a lot of work in this, Franz de Waal, actually did a TED talk about animal morality, and he talks about the pillars of morality being empathy and fairness or reciprocity.
Does free will have to do something with this?
Quite possibly.
Because if you exhibit a behavior but you're not choosing to have that behavior, can you say that it's moral? Exactly.
Right. What if it's just an instinct that they're doing things that look very moral? Matter of fact, one of the things that comes up is, the pet, the family dog. The dog poops on the carpet when you're gone. You come home, you get the paper, and you say, "What did you do? Bad dog." And then the dog makes that look, and it gives you the dog eyes, and it gets all guilty and goes on over in the corner. And then people go, "See, the dog understands. I scolded the dog. The dog knew what it did." Did the dog really know what it did, or is the dog just responding to the human's emotions. I think most of the time the dog is responding to the fact that you're upset. If you come in the house and you don't say anything at all, does the dog get upset about the crap on the carpet? No, not really. The dog's going to come up and want to play with you or see you or anything like that. Right? So,
yeah, how much are we projecting our own moral ideas onto animals?
yes. So how much of that happens versus how much is actual, emotional, empathic thinking from the animals, or intuiting or reasoning or whatever. So that's what they're kind of trying to figure out as much as possible by observing animals in the wild in the lab. And of course, it's complex behavior and trying to figure out why things are doing things. It's a lot to tether out.
Okay, but there are some experiments that are very interesting that try to trigger those behaviors in animals, such as those ideas of fairness that are at the basis of morality, where we observe animals getting upset, for example, about something being unfair.
Yep. Yes, a classic one is Franz de Waals had done some experiments with capuchin monkeys. And what they'll do is they'll give them a cucumber for doing a small, easy task. And they'll both do a task and they'll both get a cucumber and it's all good. And they're perfectly happy to do the task over and over again and get a cucumber. But then you'll take one of the monkeys and give them a grape instead. And then literally watch the other one go apeshit. Literal going apeshit. Right? So the other one gets very upset, actually looks at the cucumber like, what the hell did you just give me? We'll throw it out of the cage and then start shaking the cage. It's kind of hilarious. They get really upset and they're like, hey, you just didn't pay me fairly for the same job, literally. And they record this over and over again. And the monkeys, it's so funny, they just fling that cucumber and they get very upset. Some objections to that have been, well, if they really have any kind of reasoning about them, the other monkey might refuse the grape in protest. And they said that does indeed happen occasionally, where the other monkey will sometimes say, no, I'll refuse the grape until we both get paid fairly. So you do see this kind of fairness and animals helping out another.
So unionized labor in monkeys?
Unionized labor. Not until they start collecting dues from a bunch of members. Then it's, I guess, unionized. But it's like
collective bargain.
One step toward it. So they have that one.
So, and there are a lot of examples of animals helping each other out. And that across a spectrum of cognitive abilities that is really surprising. I mean, social animals, social insects even, have some have developed some adaptations that are centered around collaboration and helping each other out, that we might be tempted to call moral, but where does it start? Is there a spectrum of moral behavior from very simple collaborative behavior all the way up to very conscious behavior driven by conscious thought, where we think about moral issues and make decisions with our free will, assuming we have one.
I think that's kind of, I guess, what scientists are trying to figure out right now is exactly what's happening. And I think in those lower forms, like the ant colonies, it's just simply cooperative behavior driven out of instinct. It's just what they do. I don't think it's moral for one of the worker ants to not reproduce so the queen ant can, or bee, or whatever. It's just what they do.
Actually, there are slacker ants.
Oh, that's true. There are ones that freeload. I wonder if that's more an economics problem, though.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then I think that's for an expertise that maybe is not mine, right? Something maybe economics could kind of fall into morality too. With if you're slacking and not pulling your weight, you're a freeloader.
Apparently, there are advantages to the colony in times of stress to the colony, where those ants can actually they become active in those times, whereas usually they don't do anything.
Mm. So they're a freeloader, but once in a while they'll like come in and help out.
Yeah, so in the long term they are useful to the colony. They help with the survival of the population, even if it's a latent possibility. But, yeah.
I've been in some companies like this. Funny. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard really to say. Does that qualify as moral behavior or not? And if you think about things, so we're talking about all these good things, moral things, quote unquote, that animals might be doing, like helping each other out. Or there's been videos going around the internet about a monkey rescuing one off a track, or I forget exactly what kind of primate it is, and another with a dog trying to get another dog off the street when it was hit by a car and injured and things like that. So we have a lot of like just home evidence and observation in the field of animals doing these things. But how much is it actually that empathy and compassion for that other organism, which might be their own species and might not, because we know that dolphins help out divers, whales and things like that a lot. So is that compassion? Do they have that capability or not? I would say maybe dolphins do.
Yes, so on both ends of the complexity spectrum, things look obvious, but a big question is is there a clean line between the two?
Right.
And I don't think there is. And maybe our cognitive abilities are actually, in a way, a means to an end, which is, as always, in animals, the survival of the population, right? In social animals, we understand pretty well how those collectively beneficial behaviors benefit the population, right? And how they persist because they provide a selective advantage for the population. And that's pretty well understood. In our populations, is it a similar thing where having higher level cognitive abilities actually helps us help each other and have a more successful population?
I think so.
In what direction is the causality here?
Right.
Are we moral because we think, or do we think because we have to be moral?
Right. Yeah, I think more, that's kind of hard, right? These things, I think, can also, instead of having that direct causality, can kind of evolve in tandem. What if it's a bit of a race, right? As you become more thoughtful, that may necessitate, whatever the word is for it, make it necessary that we become more moral, right? Because we need a system of fairness, we need a system of compassion and empathy and things like that. So I think it might, instead of that direct cause, now chicken and egg problem, which may have come first. Go back far enough and you're talking about single cells and whatnot. So I don't know.
Yeah, but it's difficult to think about moral behavior that you can't find in other species. So.
Right. So there's always going to be something that they do. Some interesting other examples is bluebirds actually beat their spouses when they cheat. Right. So when bluebirds actually get cuckolded, they peck at, they pull their feathers out and break their beaks and stuff. They're really mean, but they do as a form of punishment. So animals actually divvy out punishments to each other, which is kind of part of the fairness and implementing morality. There are troops of monkeys that if they catch one of them hiding food, they'll beat it up. Right? So of course, animals can't really execute a whole entire justice system, about the best they can do is exhibiting some violence on other animals to keep them in line. They can't really sit down and talk these things out or build a jail. So that's what they do. They just beat the crap out of each other. So that's another kind of an interesting issue, because obviously for humans, beating the crap out of each other is not a moral response for, like hiding a cupcake or something like that. So they need to get past that to be clearly, as moral as us and superior as us, if you will.
Yeah.
But they still do have their own set of standards that do help, as you say, that survival of the whole group and, of course, the members in it. And they have their little systems that go. Somebody who wrote about this was, what's his name here? It's been a while since I saw this. Mark Growlins. And it was, can animals be moral? And he dissects a whole lot of interesting questions about it. About, the whole question is, are we just projecting, or is there any thought, compassion, and empathy behind it and stuff like that? So he's been doing some work in that. Because really, that's it, trying to figure out the motives, right? The theory of mind, which is what humans have, right? We know what we're thinking, and we can usually guess what other humans might be thinking, or we can at least know that they have these other thoughts. Animals to varying degrees can do this.
So I want to reverse that and ask if in humans, is it that we are moral, again, are we moral because we think about the problems and we try to figure out answers consciously, or are we just thinking about morality after the fact, but our moral behavior is just as instinctive as it is in animals? You can really wonder, because it's really a visceral thing,
right?
And I mean, philosophers have been debating endlessly about can you derive an ought from an is, or that sort of thing, right, which seems to corroborate that it's extremely difficult actually to have some purely intellectual discussions about those things. I mean, right, you can shed some light on moral and ethical issues using facts and reasoning, but it only gets you so far. I mean, the core of it, why is something moral or immoral, is right, something that is in a large way visceral and instinctive.
If you think about it as compassion and empathy being at the foundation of morals and fairness, that's all derived in emotion. And it is emotions that have kept humans alive. Without having fear or without having these things in place, we certainly would have been eaten long ago. We wouldn't have made it this far to have the arms race of, thinking right, and morality or whatever to happen at all. So there's that.
And that's population dynamics, and it doesn't necessarily need us to be able to think about those issues.
Right. So there's always some emotional component. If you think about some of the moral questions that people posit out there, they said there's that classic trolley question in which, say, there's a train and it's going toward 5 people. You can stop it, but the only way you can stop it is if you push one person off of a roof so that they fall in front of the train, and that stops the train.
And most people find that distasteful.
Very distasteful to sacrifice that one person for 5, yes, even though logically 5 lives for 1 is, yes, the numbers add out, right?
It's the rational decision to make, but what it seems like people find distasteful to actively do something in that case, because it creates responsibility for that one death, whereas right, if they don't do anything.
So what happens is when they phrase the question the same way, except they say you push a button and somebody that you never see or know, just kind of dies. And then people are actually when it's more abstract like that, people are more apt to do it. So, and then when they're asked later, why did you come up with this? Most people don't, they really just don't have much other than, well, it's just wrong to do that. So kind of like incest, right? People cannot articulate why it's wrong. We just know it's icky, and damn it, don't be doing
Oh no,
that,
that's an easy one.
right? Well, actually, yeah,
it's consent.
Right. If you look at it, there's a question with that too. What if there's a brother and a sister, and they use, say, birth control and condoms? There was full consent. They were adults at the time as well.
No,
they have a night. Pardon?
Oh, if they're adults.
Yeah, if they're adults.
Oh, yep. Yeah. Okay.
Of course. So then, you would be able to consent. They have a night together, and they feel that they were actually strengthened in their bonds and blah, blah, blah. And they're very happy with it. Nothing ever happens. There's no pregnancy, no nothing.
Yeah.
Was that wrong?
I have no problem with that, but I understand that many people do.
Right. Right. Exactly the same thing. Other people want to do stuff like that, knock yourself out. But yes, that is a big social taboo in many cultures. And probably for good reason, again, probably for evolutionary reasons, to not be mixing their own DNA up like that. But nonetheless,
maybe.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole show on that. Yeah, that's the good point there, maybe. So just, but it's generally taboo, right? That's something that we don't do. And you don't even think about it. People just go right into the ick factor, which again is emotion tied in with morality. Just because it's icky, does that make it right? And what's icky to one person is that to another. So the same thing, are animals doing this? Because animals do have disgust, right? If they didn't, well, some animals eat their own poo, but a lot of them know enough to not do stuff like that. Not dogs, so they know enough to stay away from certain things that might make them sick or whatever. So they do have disgust as well. So what are they just disgusted about something and attracted to something else, or is there real compassion behind an action? What's going on with the animal?
Yeah, but again, is there such a big difference between the two?
Right, that's the other thing too. So that's the philosopher's question, right? Back into that realm. All these complicated things. Sounds like it would be easy. A couple of experiments and we can call it a day. But no, they've done experiments and it just, as usual, uproots more questions, which is why science is fun, I guess.
Yeah, and I find that really interesting in general, how science can settle some empirical questions here about animal behavior, which is fascinating in itself, but even more fascinating is that it actually raises additional questions that science can't really answer on its own. And that should be the good relationship that there should be between science and philosophy, and that sometimes we don't see happening that well. But,
right.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have? Anything good? Just I would say watch the TED Talk from Friends to Wall. Had some good stuff in there with the monkeys. And they talked about ritualistic behavior in animals. Let's see. Oh, chimps. Here's a good one. Chimps and bonobos actually reconcile after fights, which kind of goes into they may actually have some compassion and feelings for their troop mates.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming that bonobos do that through sex. But they have sex for everything all the time. So.
See, now if more people were doing that, I guess Brexit wouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, make up sex.
Yeah,
sure.
But yeah, that's kind of what they do, I guess. So, but other ones like reconcile, they hug and stuff like not necessarily have sex, but they do reach out to each other. So there's that. So, and The Atlantic has an interesting piece on that, where they talk about that morality may be a product of evolution. So there's been some theories tossed out about it. I don't think anything really conclusive just yet. The work is still being kind of pioneered. So we're just starting to sit up and take notice that animals do have some of these very striking parallels. to us, whether or not we're anthropomorphizing some of it. It's still very striking parallels.
Yeah, and we should probably also talk about the very wide choice that we have in animal behavior that is obviously immoral from our standards.
Oh, right. Yes, I
the
meant to mention that.
In the animal world, we need to talk about that, because
Right.
here that's a case where we are clearly projecting. So why would we say that we are projecting on the immoral stuff and we are not projecting on the moral stuff?
Well, if you look at the immoral stuff that happens with animals, that I would say is mostly, it appears to be purely instinct much of the time. Particularly in that almost all species, they just rape quite a bit, especially ducks, birds, and feathered friends.
Just a lion eating an antelope, that's something that is kind
predation.
Of disgusting. And, yep. Or a spider eating its mate after sex, that's just abhorrent from us.
They do. Yeah, we don't do that. It's kind of taboo for us to do.
Most of us don't.
Most of us don't. Maybe you're from Milwaukee or something.
What about Milwaukee? What
Jeffrey Dahmer's from Milwaukee? He's the cannibal killer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea where that was coming from. I thought you just had some weird
weird experience in Milwaukee. I don't know. Milwaukee, there's that. I mean, don't upset.
Yeah, I mostly know Milwaukee through Happy Days. So. Happy
Days, yes. I think it literally has not changed since Happy Days.
Yeah.
But yeah, those kind of things. Now we do predation, though. I mean, we do. Some of us hunt, and we do. By and large, humans eat meat. But
and some people find that immoral.
Some people do find that immoral. So that's something where some of our species actually find certain things immoral, and some of us don't. And you don't generally see splits like that in animals, right? They just kind of all more behave collectively. It's like not like they have political party systems or things like that, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you look at the way the power structure works in animals that live in groups, such as gorillas or wolves, I mean, there are groups of subgroups that are submissive or they're dominant, and there is a whole structure of power that
all under that
has some moral aspects.
They're not like factioned off into different groups of, we believe, like Protestants and Catholics kind of thing. It's not like that or anything. They're all under that same umbrella.
No, but you will find maybe subgroups supporting this dominant individual and others.
Yeah. There's that. Are they supporting the animal, though, or the principles? I'm going to guess the animal.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But that would be interesting, because we don't know that. Like, if somebody did the experiment. You never know. Maybe they are.
What are Trump supporters supporting?
The Trump of the bonobo is, I don't know, building a big, mud wall around the zoo or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are morality depend on what group we're dealing with. How much can we learn about how we deal with the other from all that? Right.
Because if you look at othering in the animal kingdom, it's very clear cut. Who's us and them, even inside of a species, different troops will behave in war toward each other, and they know which members are members and things like that.
Although you did mention earlier some examples of dolphins helping humans.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, because where is the is it just a side effect of some instinct, or
Right.
because there is no clear benefit to the population in this case?
Right. I can't even see clear benefits to the individuals either. Where one might,
No.
you know, so I don't know why dolphins do things like that.
Yeah, so that
Do they
that would
do it
be
on
really
purpose?
interesting to understand. What?
Do they do it on purpose?
That's bad.
I know.
Even from you, that's really bad.
I know. I can't help it. Yeah, I don't know. There's no real, I don't see any benefit to dolphins for helping. If anything, they should be like, F you, look what you're doing to my coral reef, drowned. It's
Yeah.
basically, right? You know, because if anything, we've been kind of more destructive to them and their habitats. But
Yes.
once in a while, they'll save a human or do something like that, and I have no idea why. You know, and I hadn't even looked it up to see like what, you know, some of the researchers might have even said about that in particular, why they think dolphins would help us as opposed to someone in their pod, or, you know, even some other, like a porpoise or something that they have to interact with a lot, so in their environment.
Yeah.
Interesting. So if you start to Google it and you put why dolphins, and then what comes up is are bad. So apparently they do bad things too. Actually, they do beat up on porpoises and some of the smaller species of fish and stuff like that. But they don't eat. So they do that. So even though they have these, you know, moral behaviors, sometimes they're dicks. So
yeah, aren't we all?
They're pretty easily trainable, like compared to some. Yeah, I don't really see a lot on. There's a whole bunch of different, like, oh yes, dolphins are moral, dolphins are not kind of answers all over the Googles, but I don't see any actual science on here just yet. I need to look a little more.
Yeah, you won't find an instant answer on Google.
That's,
I'm afraid.
yeah, no, just programming.
Okay, cool. Interesting stuff.
So there we go. So just like everything else, it's a gray area, right? With more to learn and exposing more questions than answers.
Good.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
I think that's it.
Yep, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for watching.
Until next week.
Yep. Bye.